Well, hello, it's Patricia from Alchemy Therapies here, and this is my fourth recording in my plant medicine journey after my second integration session. And what a session that was, goodness me. Um, I'd had a recurring dream 3 nights before, which seemed to be relevant. So I was telling my guide a little bit about that dream. Now, I've had this recurring dream throughout my adult life, probably since, well, it appears since I was a young adult, where I am away from home and I need to get back home, but there's something in the way of me getting home. I'm in a city I don't know. I've missed the train. I have things I need to pack and I can't get everything in. And I'm usually in a state of confusion and fear and a sense of dread. Actually, I'll never get home. I'll never get home at this rate, you know. In the variation of the dream I had 3 nights ago, it's a double layer of getting home. So in the dream, I am renting an apartment. I seem to be somewhere warm. I'm abroad somewhere. But I know I'm on holiday, and I've been on holiday, it seems, in the dream for nearly 2 weeks. And I am trying to get the train back to my apartment in a city that I don't know. And that's always the pattern. But in this one, I'm also aware, oh my goodness, when I get back to the apartment, I'm supposed to take a flight that I have just completely forgotten about. The 2 weeks of my holiday is now up, and I need to get home to my mother who's waiting for me in England. This is rather bizarre because how do you forget a flight? But anyway, let's go with what the subconscious is telling me here. So I know that I can't contact her. This is the days before mobile phones. It's just not possible. International calls are simply out of the question for whatever reason. I mean, that was the reality when I was younger. I suppose you could ring internationally, but it was very expensive, and you just didn't do it. You sent a postcard, usually. Anyway, so there I am wanting to get home, knowing that my mother is waiting for me and not knowing if I've already missed my flight. Like it's too late. It's too late. Okay. And I wake up from this dream and I feel really upset. Consternation is the word that comes to mind. I mean, feeling of consternation. I don't know where I am. I don't know why I had that dream. I don't know what it means. Why was my mum there? So I bring that to the table today when doing my integration session. Now, bear in mind, I've had my mushroom journey. I've had two acclimatization, I guess you call it, sessions, and now my two integration post therapy session. And so I bring that to the table anyway. And I have a feeling where we're going to go with this. I have an intellectual feeling. It's to do with my mom. It's to do with I wonder if it's to do with my birth because I've just celebrated a birthday. And I know that the year of my being carried by her in the womb was a very, very difficult year. And that's where I think we're going to go. And like with all therapy, it doesn't take you where you expect, it takes you where you need to go. And we're doing some tapping on the feeling of home, the feeling of needing to get home. And I'm tapping where I realize this comes from as I'm tapping is I lost a sense of home the minute my father died when I was 18, and I just left home to go to uni. I was literally in my first week. In fact, even I can't even remember. It was my first day, I think, the first day of the first week of the first term of the first year. And my family have turned up to see me in this is what really happened, by the way. This isn't a dream or imagining. My family turned up and I'm in my room in the halls of residence because in those days, you in your first year, you would always go into halls of residence. I don't know if it's the same now. The idea was to obviously put you together with people so that you'd make friends. I hadn't really made any friends at that point. There were people I'd said hello to in the corridor. There was a couple of people I knew from the same school, but they weren't in my hall of residence. So I get the news that my family come in. I know that something terrible's happened, because why have they just turned up and I wasn't aware they were coming? And it's just bizarre because they shouldn't be here. And they break the news to me, and that my father's just died, and he died the night before. Yeah, Sunday evening, I believe. And so they've come all the way down to Southampton, ostensibly, not just to break the news to me, but to bring me home, to take me back to my family home. And I am witnessing this. I'm taken into that scene. I imagine it, and I, as myself, witnessing my younger self completely overwhelmed and completely dissociated, because she can't take in the news. It is so awful that she can't take in the news and understand what's happened to her. And so what we do then is something called Matrix Re-imprinting, which, if you've never come across this, it's a form of tapping, or EFT, emotional freedom technique. But here, instead of just tapping on yourself, which you do anyway, you imagine tapping on the person. Or in the case of the way we did it, was we imagined her watching me tapping. And by the way, I'm tapping at the same time as I'm imagining that. And I'm telling her, it's okay, I'm here. And you're not alone now. I'm from the future. I am you. And life works out, and you're okay. And even though you're in shock and pain right now, and you don't know where you are or what to think, it's okay, I'm here. And I got very tearful doing this, very tearful, because I can really see where she's at. You know, she's 18, you know, life is supposed to be opening up for her at this point. Nobody else has lost their dad at this. No one. I didn't know anybody who'd lost their dad. I didn't know anyone. By the time I've hit my mid-20s, there were a few people. So I'm tapping on her. She's very skeptical of her. She's like, what's this? You know, I'm not sure. No, I want to watch you. I don't want to do this. This is weird. Bear in mind, this is unconscious work. Okay, so if you're coming across this for the first time, this is going to sound very, very, very odd, I know, but bear with me. So you're using the power of your unconscious to connect with the echo, is what it's called, the echo of yourself, the past self that still exists in the matrix. If you understand that we're all energetic beings and everything we've ever experienced is downloaded there. And you're trying to help that person that you were manage this situation with a sense of support and connectedness. And so that's what I'm doing. And I'm reassuring her. And what comes up, astonishingly, and this just pops in, when it pops in, you know it's coming from the unconscious. It's not coming from thinking, all right? Thinking is different. It's ruminative, it's repetitive, it has a degree of sort of wanting to fix and control stuff. This just is an awareness that just arises. And what arose for me was, she wonders whether it's because she left home. I'd never thought that thought before. She's responsible for her dad dying because he died because she left. And that just was so difficult for her. I don't think I'd never thought that thought before. It never occurred to me. And so I'm reassuring her at this moment, it was just his time. It was just his time. And yeah, maybe he felt now he'd seen you off to uni, he could go. But it wasn't because you left. It wasn't because of that. And so reassuring that younger self, letting her feel that, knowing that she is going to have a life that was meant to be. And the fact that she chose not to go back at that point and to continue was exactly how it was meant to be. I'll come to that later because it's all in the gene keys as well. All right. So that's amazing. That would have been a session which I would have been very reassured by, very kind of perhaps shocked that I felt that, and I'd have felt, well, we've dealt, you know, we're working on that. But then I'm asked by my guide, is there anything else that needs to be resolved about this feeling of home? And I'm suddenly aware, and this is what happens for me when I go inside. I've got my eyes closed and I'm seeing a tunnel. And I'm going down the tunnel. It's like an eye, but it's also a tunnel. And I say to her, this is what I'm actually saying. I'm going back in time. She's like, okay, go with that. I'm going back in time, and then suddenly land with my mother's experience. And I thought it would be the birth of me, but we've gone right beyond that. We've gone to a time when she was 7, and she'd just been returned home from living with her grandma to living with her mother. My mother was relinquished at 2 weeks old because my grandma had twins unexpectedly and couldn't cope with 2 girls. She already had a boy, and she was on her own. So she gave my mother away at 2 weeks to live with her mother, my great grandmother. But at 7, my mother was forced to come back to live with her mum and twin sister because her grandma had got too elderly to care for her. So my mum lost her home, came back to home, which wasn't home, which is a complete repeat of what I had been experiencing age 18, if you like, though mine was a death. My mother's was just what was happening for this elderly woman who couldn't keep her anymore. But imagine her consternation at age 7 to return to what everyone else refers to as home, that doesn't feel like home because her twin sister doesn't want her there. How do I know this? I know this because my mother actually recorded an interview with me before she got dementia. I interviewed her and I asked her about her childhood. And one of the key phrases in that interview is, my sister didn't want me there. She said, go home. I don't want you here. Because for her, she'd been the only girl. And now there was another girl to rival her. And they hadn't really had a time growing up together. They'd grown up separately up to this point. And so for my mum, there was huge confusion. That's what I'm feeling anyway, as I'm landing there at this point in my time travel journey. Bear in mind, there are no plant medicine effects going on here. This is just pure imagination. I'm completely lucid. And I see her fear and her deep sadness. She's lost her nanny, who was mother to her, not through death, but because of the circumstances. She will continue to see her as she grows up, but she's suddenly in a new place and she doesn't feel welcome. And so again, I introduce myself, and she's a bit weirded out because who am I? I'm her daughter, grown up. Okay, so in this session, we sit down because she's only young, she's 7, and there's no way I'm going to stand in front of her. You wouldn't do that with a child. If you're tapping with a child, you'd come to their level. So we sit down. We sort of face each other at an angle on what looks like an old-fashioned kind of sofa, but it's not one of these cushiony sofas. It's quite hard and rigid. And I just tell her, I'm here for you, and it's going to be okay. And you grow up and you become great friends with your sister. And you have a wonderful life, and you find home eventually, and you have me, and here I am, and we work it through. And we understand then that my mum's neediness at the time when I was 18 to have me back also stemmed from her experience when she was 7. Now, that is a link I had never made. I knew both incidents, of course, but I'd never made that connection because I'm out of my head and into my heart. I'm going into my heart space. I'm encouraged to do this, to linger there, to feel the energy of that, to send out waves of love, to my younger self, to the younger version of my mother, who is then able to send love out to her twin sister and all the people in this story. Home is where the heart is. You've heard that phrase, okay? It's a bit of a trope, isn't it? Home is where the heart is, but that is the truth. Home is where you put your energy to belong, where you feel you don't have to try to belong. You are just accepted. And that is the job of adulthood, to accept yourself in everything that you are and allow that resonance to permeate wherever you are in life. And sometimes life throws up massive challenges, doesn't it? Certainly has in my life. And finding peace at home has often been a challenge for me, all right? Because when things go wrong, where do I go? I go to, I'm responsible, it's my fault. Because, of course, those were my experiences. And perhaps those were also my mother's experiences. And that was being given to me in this recurring dream. At least that's my understanding. And please don't get me wrong, I'm not an expert on the unconscious. I just work with it, and I know that it is profound and it teaches us things in stories, in metaphor. It'll be interesting to see if my recurring dream changes or ends. When I was a kid, I used to have recurring dreams of flying. They were beautiful. So fear obviously has taken over as I've got older. And so not having so many beautiful dreams, but having ones that are fear-based. So that was the experience today, and I've been writing it down, and I've been given some resources that I need to follow up. In fact, there'll probably be another recording because there's more to do on this. All right, I need to resource myself a lot more. That's the message. But the path that I have followed is exactly what I was supposed to do. And that was the message I actually had on the day in my mushroom journey, which I kind of got as a general thing, the path I'm on. But the path I was on, perhaps a crucial point of that path was the day I decided to stay at uni and not come home with my mother. And the echo I'm picking up there is that had I have done that, I'd have never gone back. I really feel that might have been true. And so the person I am today was predicated on that decision, even though I felt terribly, terribly guilty for not returning to be with her at that time in my life. So another final thing I want to cover is to do with the gene keys, which is a resource I was pointed to because it's in my hologenetic profile. Now, I've done a separate video on that, which I'm going to include in the show notes below. Getting your hologenetic profile done through the gene keys is free, entirely free. It's a bit like having your astrological birth chart done, but I find astrology so difficult to understand, and gene keys is so much simpler. And it also has the wonderful hook for me of being based on 64 codons of your DNA, which it turns out are not just a sort of alphabet, but they are a sort of interaction with the field. They actually allow a resonance that's unique to you because of your unique conception and time and place. In my gene key profile is gene key profile 36. Now, I'd not looked at this one, I must admit, because it doesn't come up initially in the summary, but it's in my IQ, intelligence. I guess IQ means intelligence quotient. But anyway, it's in one of the gene keys that comes up in my profile. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to investigate what that's about, because I'd not looked at this one. Oh my goodness. Becoming human, it's dark night of the soul is the shadow, if you like, a sense of turbulence. Okay, so something that happens to you that completely knocks you off your feet. Well, that was me at 18. A certain point in your life, everybody's going to have something well, certainly people with this in their profile are going to have something that knocks them off their feet. It wreaks destruction. But of course, we know that destruction is necessary for reconstruction. And it basically manifests itself as a sense of overwhelm. But if you repress that energy, if you don't allow yourself to really meet yourself in that suffering, it just plays itself out in really weird ways. It tests you, okay? And one of the ways it tests you, I'm just going to read this because it's quite interesting. When emotional turbulence is resisted, it becomes nervousness that ripples through one's entire body and aura. What's another word for nervousness? Anxiety. Okay, anxiety is the number one thing I have battled my whole life, and why I went for the plant medicine journey in the first place. There are natures that are terrified of change and that attempt to maintain outer calm at all costs. Hello? That's me. Such people are unable to relax and send nervous waves into their immediate environment, destabilizing the very things that they are trying to keep stable. So I couldn't keep a relationship, I couldn't keep a job, I couldn't keep money. Everything would disappear or blow up. Okay. They also tend to repress their sexuality out of their deep-seated fear of change, right? Well, that's another story, okay, which I've talked about before. Okay, so we tend to become crisis prone. Things just blow up. We have affairs, sexual affairs, it said. Yes, done that. And then conceal them through guilt. Yes, done that. Non-acceptance of your true nature always comes back to haunt you, where you're not in alignment with your truth. That's my own words. And thus life will always tend to draw an emotional crisis into such a person's life, so that they can deal with their emotions. And the next bit I thought was so interesting. It carries a gift of teaching into this world, the celebration of humanity. Okay, now I hope you agree that that's what my channel is all about, a celebration of humanity and the fact that we all suffer, but we can find transcendence, we can find gold, alchemy through that process. We are more humanist than divine, okay? I believe in the power of humanity to transcend. I'm not looking at a deity particularly to solve it for us. A deep insight, this genetic makeup gives a deep insight into what kind of life others will live, right? Being with them, a strong theme of emotional healing running through their lives. Okay, what do I do for a living? What is alchemy therapies? It's emotional healing. Okay. The higher they are able to raise their frequency, the clearer and more profound their emotional experiences will become. Right? There is teaching in your tragedy. There is learning in your suffering. But you need to know how to connect with that without fear. And that's what I do. The ultimate for this gene key, the kind of transcendent nature of it, is compassion. Knowing that the question of suffering is to feel compassion for your own suffering. That is how you get through and transmute it into something great. It's not through the avoidance of suffering or the repression of your feelings. And who better to illustrate that than the story of Christ on the cross? He goes into that in great detail. This is Richard Rudd, who wrote the Gene Keys. All boundaries of self dissolve. Suffering and compassion merge into one as your human heart explodes with the feelings of all human beings. their pleasures and their pain, their aches and longings, their vices and their virtues. Peace reigns supreme. And in every mythic journey, which I started with, if you go back to I think it was my first or my second recording, I had the sense I was on a mythic journey, and I had a staff in my hand where I was to place my mark before beginning my journey. This is here. There must always be a final trial, okay? A moment of utter hopelessness and helplessness, like Jesus hanging from the cross, crying out in agony, the darkenings of the light. And this is all about bringing light back into being. And so it gives us the opportunity to make huge evolutionary leaps out of our shadow state and into the higher frequencies. Well, this is what I hope I'm doing. This is why I embarked on the journey in the first place. To rid myself of the anxiety, of course, that was always the outcome. But it is not, you can't do that by just wanting to banish something. You have to allow yourself to engage with it first. So to actually feel your pain and witness that and be present with it without wanting to push it away. So compassion allows you to do that, to be present with someone, in this case, myself. And it allows your heart to open. And what burst forth for me was a light. And I was asked to imagine what color the light was. And the light for me was perhaps an indigo is the best color. I came up with sort of mauve, purpley mauve, but indigo is a good name for that. And indigo, of course, is the light of spiritual awareness, of, I guess, a coming home. And so, folks, this is a very personal recollection of my experience. There are things I need to follow up on, which I will, I think, record a fifth one. But obviously your journey is your journey, and I just hope mine has been helpful. And I look forward to reading your comments. Take care, everybody. Bye for now.